From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soyini Gray. We begin in the Dominican Republic, where delegations from the Venezuelan government and the opposition have spent a second day in talks to address the political and economic conflict in the country. Hopes have been high of a final agreement at this fifth round of dialogue. The opposition delegation has raised concerns over the presidential election announced for the coming months, but the leader of the government team said they're making progress on the outstanding issues. And President Nicolas Maduro stated that the U.S. Department of State is interfering with the peace agreements happening in the Dominican Republic.
There is extreme pressure right now from the U.S. State Department to destroy the peace dialogues taking place in the Dominican Republic. We have strong proof of the North American institution pushing all of the Venezuelan opposition to not sign the agreements we talked about a week ago and also yesterday. They want to sabotage Venezuela's electoral process.
Indigenous communities in Colombia say the Air Force has bombed their reserve in the northwest of the country. The local mayor called an emergency meeting to clarify what would be a violation of the community's rights. Telesur's correspondent Lorena Hoyos tweeted, "Communities in Chocó have denounced the armed forces bombing of the Chagpen Toro Indigenous Reserve on the San Juan coast, which left an undetermined number of victims." Colombia's largest remaining guerrilla group, the ELN, has said it expects the Colombian government to meet its obligations and to resume talks on a new bilateral ceasefire. This despite President Juan Manuel Santos' announcement on Monday that he was suspending negotiations with the ELN.
The most serious violation during the first ceasefire was not only that the improving the humanitarian situation of the population never achieved, but the regime intensified the persecution and murder of social leaders and its political opponents. Before the ceasefire, they kill a leader every 3 days, and during the ceasefire and throughout January, the killings increased to every 2 days.
The guerrilla group has said the Colombian state is perpetuating genocide against social leaders, saying that 6 ELN members were killed in January and 25 imprisoned. It tweeted out a map showing at least 10 military operations against the ELN in the month of January alone, spread right across Colombia. And violence against the most vulnerable communities is one of the main challenges facing Colombia's peace process, as most of the murders of community leaders go unpunished.
During the civil strike in Buenaventura in May 2017, we visited this neighborhood, Islas de la Paz. Community leaders told us about their efforts to resist being exiled from their own land. They talked about how multinational companies have even taken their soccer field.
This used to be all grass, but they came in the name of progress and took away our land. They took this away from the youth. They covered it in ballast.
Themistocles is no longer with us. Armed men took his life. His death has made his community very angry. Government officials have blamed his death on reasons unrelated to his work as a community leader.
How can we accept statement from the mayor's office that said his death was caused by personal problems? It didn't happen because of his personal life. Themistocles was fighting for our land, for our access to the sea, for our well-being, and now he's dead.
He also had raised his voice against the murders and threats against all of those fighting for their land in Buenaventura.
They have committed all sorts of murders, threats, intimidation tactics. We are constantly harassed by groups outside the law who are supported by the police. Our community gets no support from the police.
Meanwhile, this past weekend, indigenous leader Eleazar Tequia Bitucay was murdered. It's believed he was killed by the army. In 2017, over 150 social leaders were violently murdered.
We take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting on. Welcome back. A U.S. judge has blasted Donald Trump for what he calls vicious comments about Latinos. Judge Nicholas Garifas is the judge deciding whether or not to stop Trump from ending the DACA program, which protects immigrants brought illegally to the United States as children. He says Trump's desire to rescind DACA is motivated by his animus towards Latinos. The lawsuit was brought by several DACA recipients and by states including Massachusetts, Washington, and New York. The New York Attorney General suggested Trump's words could reflect an anti-Latino stance.
The law has changed. The law has changed because the president has changed, and Judge Garifas explicitly stated today his understanding and recognition of what I think is a clear fact, that this is an extraordinary set of circumstances to have a president express anti-Latino animus. 93% of the DACA recipients are Latinos. This is not something that doesn't connect up to the facts.
And those comments come just hours before the U.S. president delivers his first State of the Union address. Commentators are expecting him to keep pushing for immigration reform, and Trump is confident he will hit all the right notes.
Well, I hope it's going to be good. We worked on it hard, cover a lot of territory, including our great success with the markets and with the tax cut. And it's a big speech, an important speech. We cover immigration, and for many years, they've been talking immigration. They never got anything done. We're going to get something done.
Trump is expected to pitch a controversial immigration plan, which proposes giving almost 2 million immigrants a pathway to citizenship. In exchange, he gets $25 billion to build his border wall, step up security at ports of entry, and structure internal enforcement. But it's not just immigration. Trump also wants tighter control over trade.
The world has taken advantage of us on trade for many years. And as you probably noticed, we're stopping that, and we're stopping it cold, and we have to. We have to have reciprocal trade. It's not a one-way deal anymore.
The U.S. president says unfair trade deals has cost jobs, and he's determined to keep American companies at home. Most recently, Donald Trump lauded a deal he helped broker to stop air conditioner maker Carrier from moving its plant to Mexico. He claimed the move saved over 1,000 jobs. The reality is, Carrier has since laid off 500 workers.
Just like everyone else that voted for him, help our economy out. Hope to do what he promised the nation he'd do about keeping jobs in America safe. Apparently it's not happening as of right now.
Automaker Fiat Chrysler is also investigating $1 billion to shift production from one of its most profitable trucks from Mexico to Michigan. Fiat is worried changes to the North American Free Trade Agreement could hurt its bottom line. Trump's final salvo, a massive infrastructure plan to keep the economy chugging. White House officials say Trump will propose spending $200 billion on infrastructure projects and a possible additional $800 billion in state and local funding, making this a $1 trillion speech.
In Cuba, tourism officials say visitor arrivals have slid recently because of Hurricane Irma and the Trump administration's tighter restrictions on travel. Arrivals fell 10% in December and is down 7 to 8% in January. Arrivals from the United States fell by 30% after the Trump administration issued tighter travel regulations to Cuba in November of last year. Travel to Cuba remains legal, but the belief that it isn't may do more damage to Cuba's tourism than the destruction from Hurricane Irma in September.
There's a decrease of 7%, but we see this as temporary because month after month and week after week, the destinations are recovering. It is like they are new destinations and not prepared ones.
The historic Cuban Cultural Association Casa de las Americas has won the prestigious Jaime Torres Bode Award in Social Science, Humanity, and Art. The distinction is awarded by UNESCO and the Autonomous University of Mexico.
Poet and essayist Roberto Fernández Retamar received the award on behalf of Casa de las Americas. The 2017 winner was chosen by a distinguished international jury.
Casa de las Americas has been a vital institution in the construction of our America, building identity and a sense of brotherhood and progress.
The Jaime Torres Bodet Award honors the Mexican poet, writer, and diplomat, who was also one of UNESCO's founders and director generals.
This award is not just about geographical unity. It is also about the strength of the Americas. We want countries to see UNESCO and this award as a way of acknowledging the cultural rights of the people. I think it reflects what Cuba has done for liberty and intellectual relations.
Creo que eso es lo que ha hecho Cuba.
La Casa de las Américas.
Casa de las Américas was founded in 1959, just 4 months after the victory of the Cuban Revolution, by Aide Santa Maria. Since then, the institution has opened its doors to the world's most prominent intellectuals, who visited the islands to experience the role of the revolution in culture.
After receiving this award, we want to say thank you to the workers of this house and also of those in many other countries who, as Aide Santa Maria used to say, make the Bolivarian, Martiano, and Fidelista dream possible.
La Casa de las Américas
Casa de las Américas promotes the work of writers, artists, and social scientists in Latin America and the Caribbean. According to UNESCO, the house was turned into one of the most prestigious institutions of its kind in the region.
Alien Fernández, Telesur, La Habana.
And the Casa de las Americas has just made its own awards for literature from across the region in the category for Caribbean literature in English and Creole. 2 writers from Barbados and 1 from St. Vincent and the Grenadines took awards. To talk about this, we're pleased to have joining us one of the judges, Jacob Ross. He's from Grenada, but currently in Britain. Thank you so much for your time, Jacob.
Well, thank you. It was
well, my first question, Jacob, it's interesting to have a prestigious award for Caribbean literature in English from a Latin American country. How does that relationship work across the region and languages?
Well, I think it's very important, and of course the bridging aspect of it would be translation, and that's one of the strengths and one of the advantages of being on the radar of Casa de las Americas or winning a prize, because one of the things that go with the prize is, in fact, having one's work translated, which means, of course, it reaches a wider audience, which can only be good. So the 3 people who have actually been identified, in the first case, the winner, which is
Tracing Kelman by Anthony Kelman.
Tracing Jaja.
Jaja, sorry.
Jaja. Yes, by Anthony Kelman. Tracing Jaja. His book won the prize in the Caribbean section, and of course we had some very distinguished books also being flagged or highlighted.
Tell My Mother I Gone to Cuba.
Being Tell My Mother
I Gone to Cuba by Sharon Milagro Marshall. And Canoe and Suite
Barbados.
By Philip Nanton.
Canoe and Suite, yes, by Philip Nanton, yes. Very, very strong work. In fact, we had a wonderful array of high-quality works. Another Barbadian writer who I thought made a very, very, very strong impression and is also worthy of a mention, although, of course, we only had 2 people. That was this wonderful book called Leaving Atlantis, a book of poetry. And there were others too, but these were certainly.
So Jacob, I wanted to ask really quickly,
mind, yes.
How do you see the situation of Caribbean literature in the world today? I mean, outside of just Latin America, just in the wider world, how do you see Caribbean literature being situated for international audiences?
Yes. Yeah, well, I think our great golden period was in the 1950s and 60s with some of the writers coming from the Caribbean and actually either migrating to the UK or the United States of America. And there had been a sort of quiet period, a lull, until relatively recently, I would say in the past 5-10 years. Marlon James winning the Booker Prize has turned the world's attention back to the Caribbean and to Caribbean writing. Caribbean writing has always been very, very strong and very healthy. We have some of the world's most fantastic writers. It's simply that publishers seem to have, and the readership seem to have turned their heads the other way, getting taken up by writing that come from other spaces, other cultural spaces. But now, people are turning back towards Caribbean literature and seeing, having a sense of what they have been missing. Yeah. So in a way, there's a lot to look forward to. It's quite an optimistic time for us.
Jacob, thank you so much for talking to us. I have to agree with you. It's really an exciting time for Caribbean literature. We've been talking to Jacob Ross. He is one of the judges of the Casa de la Americas Literature Prize for the Caribbean. Other news now. In Guyana, Caribbean ministers of agriculture met Monday ahead of the 35th Food and Agricultural Organization meeting. The meeting will be held in Jamaica in early March. The FAO regional conferences are an official forum where ministers of agriculture from across the Caribbean meet to discuss challenges and priority matters related to food and agriculture to ensure regional cooperation. And people in Peru are protesting against President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski's decision to grant a humanitarian pardon to ex-dictator Alberto Fujimori. Veronica Insausti tells us more from Lima.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Así es, en breve aquí en Lima y en las
A new protest will take place here in Lima and in the main cities of the country against the pardon granted to Alberto Fujimori. There are calls for the resignation of President Pedro Pablo Kuczynski. People are very angry for two reasons. The first is regarding corruption cases that came to light after Operation Car Wash case involving Kuczynski. This is still under investigation, and new evidence is being found each day. People are also angry about the so-called humanitarian pardon granted to former dictator Alberto Fujimori in December by PPK. According to human rights organizations, specialists, and their very ombudsman, there isn't enough basis for the pardon to be considered humanitarian. Fujimori was sentenced to 25 years in prison for crimes against humanity. That's why people from all around Peru are protesting for the fifth time against this illegal measure. This Friday in Costa Rica, at the headquarters of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, there will be a hearing with the families of the victims from the dictatorship. A judge from the Peruvian state will decide if the pardon is or is not illegal after submissions from both sides. The International Court will evaluate the case for some weeks, but not more than 2 months. The sentence will be linked to Peruvian law. This means that the ruling will be final.
Y también un abogado defensor.
We thank Veronica Insausti for that report. Police have used water cannons to suppress hundreds of protesters in Santiago, Chile, who were demonstrating over recent changes in lithium mining. Police detained a number of protesters called to action by the United Workers Central, or CUT, and the movement Lithium for Chile, who say the material is a strategic national resource which should be nationalized. The Corporation for the Promotion of Production has signed an agreement with Chile's largest lithium producer, SQM, to allow them to increase the amount it mines in Sala de Atacama. And Pope Francis will be sending a sex abuse investigator to Chile in a sudden turnaround since his Chile trip earlier this month. Earlier this month, the Catholic leader has said that sex abuse crimes against Bishop Juan Barrios, who he appointed, lack concrete evidence. Today, in a new statement, the Vatican said that information had emerged prompting an investigation by Archbishop Charles Sicuna of Malta, who had also been involved in the sex abuse case of a Mexican priest who was removed in 2005. And we'll take another short break. Join us after this look at what our multimedia team is reporting on. Welcome back. In Spain, a crucial vote to reappoint ousted Catalonian President Carles Puigdemont was delayed, sparking anger in the streets of Barcelona. We have more in this report.
Scuffles between Catalan pro-independence supporters and Catalan police broke out outside Parliament. Police in riot gear watching over the demonstrations. The Catalan Parliament Speaker, Roger Torrent, postponed the vote for a new regional head. Torrent said the session will be postponed until there are guarantees for the sessions to be held in a normal fashion. He says there can be only one president, Carles Puigdemont.
Ni la vicepresidenta Soraya,
nor the Deputy Prime Minister Soraya, neither the Constitutional Court will decide who will become Catalan president. Nor Deputy Prime Minister Soraya, neither the Constitutional Court will decide who becomes president. That decision lays on the members of the parliament who were democratically elected.
escollits democràticament.
Spain's highest court ruled Puigdemont ineligible to be president. He remains in Belgium and cannot return to the country or else he'll be arrested. There is a warrant out for his arrest, stemming from last year's declaration of independence from Spain.
I don't agree with independence. Barcelona is part of the same country, Spain. What I can say is that I don't agree with that. I am from Venezuela. The situation in Venezuela is well known and I would compare the situation. It is not good to divide people. Well, we trust our parliament speaker. Do I like it? No, I don't, but I trust his intelligence, and if he does it, it should be for a good reason. At least they won't pose more obstacles.
Analysts believe the decision to stick with Puigdemont signals there will continue to be a push for secession. In fact, Madrid may continue to impose more direct control in an attempt to block the push for independence.
Now let's have a look at some other stories from around the world.
War-ravaged Yemen have surrounded the presidential palace in the government's de facto capital, Aden. The government has accused the separatists of attempting a coup, in which more than 36 people have now been killed. Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga has had himself sworn in as an alternative president in front of thousands of supporters, 3 months after an election he claims was stolen from him. Authorities have repeatedly warned that such an inauguration is treasonous and that Odinga could face arrest.
Raila Amolo Odinga, in full realization of the high calling, assumed the office of the People's President of the Republic of Kenya. Do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the people and the Republic of Kenya, that I will preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of Kenya as by law established, and all other laws of the Republic as adopted by the people of Kenya, that I will protect, uphold sovereignty, integrity, and dignity of the people of Kenya. So help me God.
Israeli soldiers have shot dead a 16-year-old Palestinian boy in the occupied West Bank in a village north of Ramallah. The Palestinian Health Ministry said that Laith Abu Naim was hit in the head during clashes with soldiers. U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin has told the Senate Banking Committee that Trump's administration will seek to impose sanctions on Russian oligarchs who are close to the Kremlin. He said this on Tuesday, January 30th.
Our sanctions are based upon an enormous amount of intel work. There was an enormous amount of work that went into creating this report, and that's what we did. And now we will take the basis of that report and look at, kind of, as we do in the normal course, where it's appropriate to put sanctions.
There's a national nursery for hammerhead sharks right here in our own backyard in Ecuador. Researchers have discovered what appears to be a million-year-old home for baby sharks in the Galapagos Islands.
Tucked away in the mangrove swamps and reefs of the Galapagos Islands is a home for newborn hammerheads. A group of Ecuadorian scientists discovered the nursery on Santa Cruz, one of the main islands on the archipelago. This is a particularly important discovery because the hammerheads are under threat.
Sharks are on the red list, mainly because they are threatened by overfishing. The hammerhead shark is one of the most threatened. It's in critical danger. Its population worldwide has declined by over 90%.
The Galapagos Sanctuary offers a safe zone for the babies until they're about 2 and able to fend for themselves, often traveling thousands of kilometers in search of food. Scientists are hoping this find will help them track, study, and understand the evolution of the hammerhead shark.
The sharks need a continuous flow of water so they don't die. Then we hold it, we take biometric data, we mark the shark, we weigh it, we take the necessary measurements, and we release it. All this in less than 2 minutes.
The hammerhead shark can grow as long as 3 meters, live for up to 50 years, and weigh a staggering 580 kilograms.
We've come to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
Mi nombre es Mónica Malo, soy de Cuenca, Ecuador. Me dedico desde hace aproximadamente 30 años al arte textil. Como países